Good evening. Hi, everyone. I'm Mika from Agile Centre, one of the co-hosts of this meetup. If you've just joined, please stay muted initially. And we will also please ask you to keep your video on as much as possible. So thank you for taking the time out to join us tonight. We really do appreciate it. We're a new meetup. We're trying to build a new community here, specifically focused on Agile leadership and business agility. So it's great to see this growing. Tonight's session with Shaun will be a great insight into organisational design and change. I'll let Shaun introduce himself in a moment and the structure of the talk itself, as we're hoping to make it interactive by making use of breakout rooms. Please tweet as well, tweet at Agile Centre, and also please send in any questions that you do have throughout. So please send that in the chat box privately to Agile Centre, that's me, and then I'll collate them all, and at the end Shaun can do a Q&A. This event is being recorded. It will go up on our website and our YouTube channel. Please also keep your smartphone nearby. So you might see that QR code in the bottom corner of the screen there. Please keep your smartphone nearby so that you can capture that code at a few points throughout the talk, so that you can participate in a live poll on slido.com, or you can just type it in slido.com and pop the code in itself to bring that poll up as well. I think that's all the logistics out of the way. So that's about it from me. So I'll get out of the way now and hand over to Shaun.
Oh, thanks very much, Mika. Evening, everyone. I see some of you are in beautiful places compared to the little hot room that I seem to be in. This is the first for me. I've never really been able to present in a room like this. This whole window down here means that currently in this room it's 29 degrees. So it's the first time I've managed to present in shorts, t-shirt and barefoot. I've never done that on a stage before. So so bear with me as we go along here. So hi everyone, my name is Shaun Cooney and I work for the UK government. The department that I work in exists 18 or 24 months ago, so it's a brand new area. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. This is not a polished presentation. It's not a keynote speech or anything like that. It's my story. It's about the successes of the things that we've done and the things that we've learned from, the things that we've failed on, and things that we know that we need to improve in the future as well. It's specifically about a UK government department, and I've done that for a reason, not only because that's where I work, but also because if the UK government can do some of the things that I'm about to speak about, then why can't you? Why can't other government, or why can't other organisations around the UK and around the world do some of these things? So I'm going to share a selection of the experiments that we have done over the last 18 months. And then towards the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about how this has helped us with our COVID-19 response, seeing though it's a little bit topical today. So let's get started. A little bit of participation from you to start with to get things going. So let's imagine you're in this situation. You're in a unique situation. This is very rare, I found. You have been given the reins on a new government department. It's a central government department. The whole department as a whole has around about 2,000 employees. And you're providing engineering services, so software, infrastructure, security, engineering services to a range of different customers, both internally and externally, to the public, other government departments, and also for your own government department. Some of the work that you do is a little bit sensitive, so you have to do it on isolated networks, but a lot of it's not. And then all of a sudden, a new market becomes available across the government. And it's a cybersecurity market, something that we've never really been involved with before. And you're responsible for building this new department within this wider engineering services team. So my question to you is, what do you focus on first? What are the things that are most important to you and your team when you're setting this up? So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes. What we're going to do here is break you into small rooms, Mika, of 2 or 3 people maybe. Just have a quick conversation between you. And then if you can post your answer onto that Slido page, that'll be great. And we'll come back in 2 or 3 minutes time.
So what would you start? Is it Catalin?
It's Catalin, yes. Do you remember the question? Exactly.
I think it was from that set of conditions Shaun had, where would you start? You've got this new market, you've got new teams. What else did he say? Where is it on the
yeah,
slide?
I can't remember.
What should we focus on first? So what would you focus on first in most cases?
Probably I would try to learn from what they have. at the
Yeah.
moment, and what works well and what doesn't. So first I would observe so as long as I can. That
So
would be my
learn from the
first step.
strength of the existing team.
Yes. Yeah. So I would try to figure out how they do things and what their expectation is. How
Mhm.
about you? What do you think?
I think that's a really good start. I think there's something about where you've got a new team. You've got some choices about choosing a culture and choosing ways of working. You know, if you do nothing, they'll just arrive and do what they would have done. So because they're all new, you could take that opportunity to choose from what you want to achieve in terms of the culture. Hi there, Arabella.
Yeah, we have a new joiner.
Yes, I was all by myself, and the conversation was very interesting.
So we were just starting, and Kathleen was saying where she might start is, and I wrote it down in this slider room, is learn from the strengths of the existing team. So I understand the current team, a bit of observation, and I think you just caught what I was saying. Where would you start, do you think?
Is it was there a team already in place, or is this a brand new team?
It's a brand new team
with people from other departments probably being merged into a whole new setup.
Yeah, I think some people from existing elsewhere in the department, and other people that are newly hired.
Yeah, it will probably. I would start by figuring out where they were in terms of not only their technical capabilities, but also their own personal capabilities, and if they understood what this new world would mean, and if they were on board with it. Because especially when you pull people from other areas, they'll have their own network, and it's change, it's uncomfortable, and you would have either the people that didn't quite enjoy what they were doing and they see this as an opportunity, or the people that are quite settled and this will be quite scary for them and it will undermine their comfort, it will create uncertainty, so there will be kind of detractors and bring in potentially negativity. So understanding where each individual is at and work to build a new team spirit, that's probably where I would focus.
I'm not ignoring you, by the way. I'm just writing down on things so we can report back. So what I've written down is learn from the strengths of the existing team. You have an opportunity to choose the culture you want. Figure out where the team are in terms of technical and personal capability and motivations. This is a change, so understand the background that have led people to be in the team, positives and negatives. Does that roughly summarize what we were saying, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Thank you for doing this.
So I just hit
so then we can add something to the slido.com.
Yes, I've sent that off. So
cool. Thank you.
Cool.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss?
I don't know, maybe other things after that. Anything comes to mind?
Other things that you'd be worried about?
Probably there are a lot of things, right?
Yeah,
I think just one.
I think a very clear focus on what the mission of the team is, and constantly make sure that everyone is still on board and still heading that direction, or if the direction needs to change, that everyone's changing together, not starting to go into their own little pockets.
So kind of being clear on what that direction is.
Yeah, so they need to have a team purpose.
Yeah.
that's clear.
Yeah. So is that the sort of thing you would do, kind of go down the kind of agile chartering, team purpose, visioning sessions, that sort of thing, do you think?
I think that's a good start. Like they can have a kind of a team alliance on there as well. So yeah, that makes sense to me.
It's Shaun's talk. Do you want to come join us?
Quite envy your location, I have to say. It's not too bad.
Nice to be out here today.
And the horses, not just one horse, right?
Don't look my best.
Wow.
Yeah, Shaun was describing the beginning where there's this new opportunity, new department being created, and his question was, where would we start? So we talked about breakout rooms closing in a minute. So we talked about understanding the team, the existing team, and we talked about being able to choose the culture and setting the vision and setting the purpose for people, and then talked a bit about understanding people's motivations. So people are joining the team. Some might have joined because they are forced to join, and it's a move that's forced on them. Others might have, left other jobs to be hired. So understanding the motivation of the people.
Empowerment as well, I guess. A lot of agile teams have higher empowerment, don't they, than other teams, and that might be a motivator for some. The feeling that you have the choice to make decisions, you're empowered to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad sitting here drinking gin.
Don't
feel bad. It's perfect.
We wish we were you.
Yeah. Cheers.
See you.
Cool. Everybody's back.
Perfect. So if you haven't put your suggestions into the Slido, please do so now. There seems to be a theme at the moment, team, and we'll come back to that, and opportunity. Yeah, so my screen, my Slido screen is behind the screen I can see here, so it's difficult to see. But yeah, opportunity and team, we'll come back to that, and there's a few more Slido events in a bit as well. I'm still very jealous by some of you who are sat out in the sun. I'll continue to be here in a hot room. It's great. Okay, let's end that one. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of information about myself. So I joined this area as the head of engineering for the cybersecurity area around about 18 months ago. Previous to that, I was a technical director in another part of the organization, but my background for the last 10, 15 years has been in engineering in general, either as a software engineer, an infrastructure engineer, or a security engineer. So I've always been around engineers in some sense. But I would consider myself, at least over the last couple of years, working as an agile coach across the organization and across also other parts of government as well, trying to encourage government departments, both inside and outside, to improve their processes, their ways of working. So my problem was roughly 4 years ago, the government, the UK government, decided that they were going to set up a government-wide program on cybersecurity. And they threw a whole bunch of money at this. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions, billions of pounds at this problem. And in total, they threw around about 400, 450, I'm going to call them delivery people. Some of them are technical, some of them are not technical. But they threw these people at this problem and told them to stand up really quickly. We need to solve the cybersecurity problem across government rather than doing it in lots of different departments. And because it needed to be done so quickly, they decided that actually we're not going to throw staff at this problem because this is new. We can't recruit staff that quickly, and not at least staff with the right skills. So we're going to give this problem to mostly industries, mostly contractors. And because of that, the rate of churn in these teams meant that a lot of these teams are transitory. So a lot of the things we would normally focus on, things that you have said so far about teamwork, were actually quite difficult to do. The program itself as well, because there's so much money, it's public money, had to be managed correctly, which meant a whole bunch of processes, a whole bunch of governance, a whole bunch of reporting. We had to handle that money correctly. So a lot of the process was around Prince 2. My job around about 18 months ago was to come in and work out how we can close down this program, how it could close down in roughly a year from now, and continue with the same amount of effort, but a lot of that being moved to internal staff. a little bit more background, I suppose. The area that I work for, the engineering services area, had failed at this at least twice before. We've been involved with the cybersecurity market across multiple different departments across government over the last 10 years, at least twice. And we had failed to do so. And that's because our background, our organizational structure was mostly around technology. If you wanted to build a database or find someone at that database, you'd go to the database area. If you wanted to build a web app, you go to the web app area. So everything was focused around technology. And because of that, there was a huge lack of trust in our area. Nobody really wanted to come and work with us. So we had a rare opportunity to try and figure that out and try and fix that. The organization as a whole decided actually we're going to refocus, we're going to pivot ourselves around different markets or different missions rather than technology. So this gave us a real opportunity to try new things. So my answer to that question, the Slido question that I gave you a second ago, is to focus on culture. I think you got it, right? If you can focus on culture, that will drive behaviors. And that will inevitably mean that you get the right performance longer term. So what do we do? Well, we built a number of things, four main pivotal aspects to building this right culture. The first thing is we decided that we wanted some shared values. This was really important. Everything was going to be based around these shared values. And we had 3 of them, nice and simple. Unabating adaptiveness, that was the first one. We knew that the cybersecurity market would change. It changed the year before. It changed again very recently. We know it continuously changes. We also knew that our organization, whilst we're looking at the cybersecurity mission right now, or cybersecurity market right now, we knew that maybe that's not the thing that we need to focus on longer term. So we wanted to build an area that could focus on lots of different areas and change and react really quite quickly, enabled us to flex more easily. And we also knew, because of that, we couldn't use the normal government hierarchy. We didn't want to build a really big hierarchical system, top-down approach, typical of military organizations. And I tell you what, given what's happened over the last 12 weeks, I'm so glad we did this. This is what's made us a success over the last 8 to 12 weeks. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. There are certainly some things that we can improve and certainly things that we can make better next time. The next thing, the next value that we had is continual helpfulness. And I really mean this. I don't just mean saying thank you and giving someone a hand every so often. I mean making a core part of everybody's job helping other people. A significant portion of everybody's job is spending time with other people they wouldn't normally spend time with, to make it normal. And the reason why we did this is because not only does it make us more adaptable, our first value, but it also means that everybody is invested in everything because they understand the big picture. We're one big team. If they understand the big picture, then we can easily move around to different aspects. It gave individuals the chance to be better and contribute to things that they wouldn't normally have the opportunity to focus on. And it also gave people the opportunity to be innovative and help with different problems. And our third and final value was what I like to call radical transparency and inclusiveness. And I mean both of them terms, transparency and inclusiveness, 2 separate things combined into one value. And we did this because we wanted to build trust. We did a number of things to enable this value. We don't have a typical senior leadership team. It doesn't exist in our area. We have what we call a core team. And our core team is made up of people at all grades. We're a government organization, so we still have grades and pay structures, but it's made up of people from across all grades. And we don't have decision makers in there. Their job of this core team is to unblock problems. And I'll talk more and more about that as we go through this presentation. If there is a problem, the job of that team is to unblock it. That's it, no more. And this is because what we recognize is that our workforce are the most important thing that we have. And we wanted to make them accountable for building the area that they wanted to work in. We didn't want it to be a top-down approach. And this inevitably means that it encourages big picture thinking. So a quick Slido poll again. Does your organization have values? And if it does, do you really believe in them? Do you really live by these values? I'm just going to bring that up now. Give you just 30 seconds for that one. Yeah, so the numbers are similar to the polls that we've done elsewhere across government as well. A lot of people have values. They know what their organisational values are. But you get told them maybe the day you join, and that's it, and then they're gone. So we really wanted to make these at the forefront of everybody's mind. Everything they do is about the values. And if they do something that improves or follows one of these values, then they're doing the right thing. You no longer have to ask permission to do absolutely anything in the organisation. I'll talk more about that in just a second. So the next thing we did is recruit the right people. We didn't have any people, right? So we needed to recruit the right people. So most of our recruitment, we decided that we were going to do externally. We're going to recruit new people into the organisation rather than pulling existing people from our 2,000 strong engineering areas. And we did that for a few reasons. Number one, I've already told you we failed a few times at this in the past. So we didn't want to bring that culture over. Even if it was only perceived culture, we didn't want to bring the same people over. Secondly, we're an organisation that has worked on multiple markets for a long time. And these markets are very different to one another. So actually the strength of our people in that market may be best placed in that market rather than bringing them over to a brand new market that we've never really had to operate with before. So what we decided to do is interview in a very different way. So we worked with our HR organisation to try and figure out how we can move away from some of the normal government practices, and we interviewed for 3 things, and that's it: curiosity, aptitude, and passion. If you can prove to me and any of my team during an interview that you can show and demonstrate these 3 things, we'll recruit you. I don't care about your skills. I don't care about your background. We can throw money at that, and we can probably train the right people if they have curiosity, aptitude, and passion. So that's what we did. We always train the right people. And then when they joined us, we spent the first couple of days with them, getting them to understand the reason why we're building this culture, the why behind our culture and our values. Obviously, during the interview, we showed them we made them aware of our values, so people get the opportunity to buy into them. We can't make people buy into our values. If they didn't want to buy into them, they don't join us. Simple as that. And we made sure that our training when people joined was a significant portion of everybody's time for a long time. 20% a day a week should be focused on self-development for a long time. But inevitably, when you do this, when you're recruiting an area, in our case, it's just peaked over 100 people as of yesterday. That means that recruiting 100 people, mostly graduates, you're going to have a whole bunch of different problems that you have to deal with. So we did do some internal recruitment as well. But we didn't recruit the normal type of people. We recruited what I'm going to call disruptors. And these are the type of people that like to make things difficult for you, but they're also the type of people that make change happen. And throw them at some graduates, throw them at a whole bunch of mid-career people that have come in that want to make a difference of joining the government rather than private sector, and you really have something that's quite brilliant. We also recruited a whole bunch of internal specialists. These numbers are minuscule compared to the external people we recruited. But these specialists were people that we knew had an understanding of some of the skills that we knew that we were going to need. We recruited them in not to practice that skill, but to help other people get better at that skill. Their job was to teach. And in a recent example, one of our more senior posts, we've even said, actually, it's the job of the people to find out who's going to lead the area. So let's do a meet the team panel. And we allow people across the area. Our area is called Engineering for Cybersecurity, or NCS as we call it. And we allow our people, the people that work within NCS, to essentially ask questions of any possible candidate that wants to join at a senior level. And we do that for a few reasons. Not only does it give people the opportunity to ask questions of their potential future senior leaders, but it also gives our potential candidates, potential future leaders, the opportunity to understand what's important to the people that they're going to be leading. And that was really important to us. And the third thing we did in this space is made sure we measured everything. I can't say this loud enough. It's all about data. And if you don't drive your culture by data, you're just winging it, really. So we made sure that everybody, when they joined, they had 3 objectives, simple as that. 3 objectives or OKRs. I'm going to paraphrase these. First one was, prove that you didn't lie at interview. Let's find something that you said that you could do at interview, and let's get you to do it. I don't care whether it's useful or not. Let's just throw you onto that task and prove you can do it. Remember, we interviewed for very specific reasons. Second thing we did is prove to me you can learn something new. If you can learn something new, you've proved some of the curiosity, aptitude, and passion. So we'll throw you onto a new task, whether that be something that's a new technology, a new way of working, or a new business problem that you've never seen in your life before. And then the third thing was prove that you can work in an effective team and also think bigger. That's important. I said earlier that we recruited a whole bunch of graduates. Teamwork is not what you do in your dissertation or in your final project. It's just not. We wanted people to be able to prove that they can work well together and they can call each other out when they're not doing a good job. And that really is effective teamwork. So we made sure that we assessed them on these 3 objectives. And we were very prepared that actually we weren't going to get everyone past our probation period. We did this for 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, we can turn people away. And we were sure that we weren't going to get people through our probation period. And that was okay. That was expected. Our number was expected to be higher than the rest of the department because of this. And the final thing we did here is all of these objectives, these 3 objectives, weren't measured by that person's line manager. They were assessed and measured by your colleagues, by the people around you. It's not the traditional hierarchy that we're used to in government. And here are some metrics on what we've ended up with. So this has enabled us to build a real diverse workforce. And I mean that in every possible sense. I've only called out a couple of them, 3 of them on here. Gender, for example, 33% of our workforce are female. In the UK, that number in software at least is 11%. So we're significantly higher than the UK average. In our, what I'm going to call our leadership grades, our higher grades, actually that number is 45% for us, coming up to 50%, coming up to half of our workforce at our senior grades. Experience, almost 2/3, I wasn't lying earlier, almost 2/3 of our workforce are graduates. That brings all sorts of challenges. And 25% of our workforce, when we first recruited them, hadn't written a line of code in their life. And we're bringing these in as software developers, training them to be software developers. And a significant number of our people came in with either a learning difference or a disability, just a way of thinking differently. It gave us an opportunity to think outside of the box. And we do this for a good reason, because we don't know what we're going to need next month. We don't know what we're going to need tomorrow, but we definitely don't know what we're going to need next month. And if we can bring in people that don't have the skills and prove they can learn, when that skill is no longer needed and we need a new skill, we've already proved they can learn, so they can do the same thing again, right? Okay, the next thing we did is we put together a manifesto. Like the Agile Manifesto, it was ideas from everybody, generated by everybody within NGCS, and it's about how we commit to working. And then we put together a people charter, and this is about how we commit to being like as a team. Slightly different, but nuanced. And both of these documents, which are plastered all over our walls, all over the place, are examples of just how we can demonstrate the values that we have. And if people do some of these things, like provide feedback openly and honestly and critically to one another, that's one of the examples in the people charter, then it's already proving that you're meeting some of these values. So they're just examples of how you can meet them. And I guarantee they're not just shelfware. They're all over the place, and everything we do relates back to these. As an example, I often walk out of meetings, especially after long, tired days, and I get called out by graduates, by people that have joined us 6 months ago that have never really experienced the workplace, let alone come and work for a government organisation. And I get told that actually I came across poorly in that meeting. And these are people that are quite a few grades lower in the normal hierarchy, in the pecking order of things. But that's what we want. And if people don't do that, then we're failing as an organisation, right? Okay, feedback. I've talked about this a little bit, so I won't talk for too long. Everything we do is about doing, measuring, learning, doing. Do, measure, learn, do. Keep repeating it. And we measure everything from our yearly civil service survey, which is only once a year. And then we take the most important questions from that, the questions that are really important to us as an organisation, or questions that other similar organisations, whether they be government or public or private, have failed on when they're starting up as a new organisation. And we ask them questions on a monthly basis, so we can track the trends and make us better. We encourage everybody in the area to dot vote on what the core team fix next. So as I said earlier, we don't have an SLT, we have a core team. What do they work on? Well, that's decided by our people, the people that work in the area. They're the people that we need to be servant leaders for, right? Regular feedback is not just encouraged, it's part of everybody's objectives. It has to be constructive, it cannot be anonymous. We don't have the concept of honest brokers. If you're not willing to say something to someone, in person in a constructive way, then don't say it at all. This is probably not the right area for you. And we're really quite harsh on that, I think. So all 4 of these things, the way we do recruitment, our manifesto, our people charter, and the way we do feedback, are all just examples of how we can build this culture. So I'm going to provide a few examples of how we enact some of these values. These are experiments, a little bit like Lean Startup, where we had a hypothesis and we wanted to test it. So the first thing is, let's build an organizational structure that would work, that would make us adaptable. This is about unabating adaptiveness. So what we decided to do up front is admit that we don't know what the next opportunity or threat's going to be. At the moment, it's suddenly moved over to biosecurity. Who would have known that 3 months ago? We don't know. So the idea here is we wanted to move away from the annual portfolio build process that the government is used to, where up front you have to figure out what you're going to be doing over the next year, maybe 6 months before that year started. So you're planning 18 months worth of work up front. We wanted to move away from that. So what we did is said we had a few principles. The smallest team is a unit, or smallest unit is a team. We didn't talk about individuals, we only spoke about teams, and we'd build high-performing teams, long-lasting teams. One of our rules at the time was that the team had to be together, but teams working together didn't have to be co-located. That's one of the examples that we've had to change recently, and I'll talk more about that later because we've learned a lot from that. We also said, actually, realistically, the UK government knows how much money we have to spend. Our department knows how much money we have available to us. So rather than negotiating each individual contract as and when it happens, let's just buy a workforce. Let's just buy an industry workforce up front and buy our staff up front. So now we know exactly how many people we've got and build teams. We don't know what they're going to work on yet. We don't know what skills they're going to need. We can teach that. So let's buy a workforce. There was no set grade profile. We didn't have the typical hierarchical grade structure. And we allowed promotions within existing teams rather than the normal typical dead man's shoes problems that a lot of organizations had. We put a couple of constraints in place saying that your line manager, the person that supports your performance shouldn't be in your team to avoid any conflict of interest. And then we said, okay, what are the strategic things that we're trying to do? This is to support the portfolio build process. We're not going to get away from the government needing to do this because there are policy and legal constraints around this that we had to honor. So let's try and figure out what these things are up front, and we'll do that 18 months before. No problem. They'll change. They'll always be wrong. But let's figure out what they are. And then on a more regular basis, in our case, every quarter, we allow each of our, what we've called business owners, I've called them business owners for a reason. I'm going to call it a strategic PO in front of this audience, strategic product owner, because that's what it really is. It's taken the strategic part of the product owner role, and we called it a business owner because people didn't like the term product owner. It was deemed as too agile and not really following the government best practice. So we called it a business owner. And then on a quarterly basis, we would allow them to place their chips where they wanted to place them. We had 20 chips in this case, because we've got 20 teams. And they can place these chips where they want. This is an investment decision, and they can do this on a quarterly basis rather than 6 months before for an 18-month period. And that's where we place our teams. But that's just teams. I haven't mentioned anything about capabilities, services, products, systems, or any of that yet, because that's actually underneath. We encourage our teams to use an open source mindset. I talked about transparency earlier and contribution and helping one another. This focuses on that. Each of our capabilities can have what we call a capability guardian. That person's responsible for making sure that other people can contribute to that capability. They do not have the power to say no. They cannot say no. All they can do is help other people better integrate and develop that capability. Their job is to enable contribution. And everything that they do is linked to the strategic outcomes. We can tie it back. We can see how much money we're spending, and we can report on that if we need to. And it enables this annual portfolio planning process. And we've done this all without using terms for the reasons I said earlier, like product owner, like agile, like less, and like safe. Because all of these terms were a turn-off to the people that we're working with. So we wanted to use terminology that was business appropriate. Okay. For our continuous helpfulness value, Here's an experiment that we tried. We said, actually, in order to be helpful, you really need to know people, and you can't put money on that. In order to know people, you have to get people together. It's ironic given what's going on at the moment, isn't it? So I don't know who's seen the Forget the Pecking Order TED Talk. We show everybody, every one of our new starters when they join, we sit them down for 22 minutes, and they just watch this video. And it talks about removing stars. We don't want high-performing individuals. We want to level the playing field and celebrate team successes rather than individual successes. And we need to encourage teams to do that. So we do that in a number of ways. First way is we build team objectives. Each team, once they pass probation and they are a full member of the organization, we give them a team objective. That team objective can only be met if everybody in the team contributes. We also do things like what we call our TGIF call, our Thank God It's Friday call, where every Friday everybody gets on a call, and we use a product called Lean Coffee Table. It's always been done remotely because we're spread over 9 sites around 3 locations in the UK. And everybody gets to vote on what we're going to talk about, come up with an agenda, and everybody can contribute and everybody can answer questions. Yet again, no hierarchy. It's about helping one another. And almost every one of our people dial into it because they see the benefit in not only being helped by others, but also the value they can add. I don't know about you, but I haven't really seen that before in many organizations that I've worked for in the past, especially organizations with so many young people that without trying to cast aspersions here, where a lot of people are in it for themselves. And we're trying to build something that means that you can't be in it for yourself. You can't succeed if you're in it for just yourself. And the other things we've done are things like our Fun Fridays. It sounds really fun. So the first Friday of every month, we get everybody together. Some people call this Forced Fun Friday, not really forced fun, where we get everybody together once a month. And we focus on 3 things. We focus on learning and improving. We focus on team building, and we focus on well-being as well. There's a lot to be said for just having lunch together, even when you're spread around the UK, pulling people together on a regular basis, or having a beer down the pub the evening before. There's a lot to be said for that. And it really builds this social capital, this connection. That doesn't, I haven't even talked about the ridiculous number of Slack channels that we have and the number of informal communities that we have and the annual events that we run where we bring in motivational speakers and customers to talk about the impact. And we essentially do a big retro of how we've operated over the last year and what we're going to focus on next. All of this is about bringing people together to focus on helpfulness, to ultimately make us a more adaptable organization. It makes you think bigger. Okay, we built this thing. This is our thank you app. This was an innovation project. We wanted to prove if it worked. It essentially allows you to go in, choose the teams that you're in, and be recognized in a way that works for you. Not everybody likes to be recognized in the same way. I couldn't come on a call like this, for example, and recognize everybody within NCS in the same way. Some people don't like that. So it allows you to be either competitive in our league as a team and as an individual, but only recognized for being a member of a team. Or to be lucky for our lottery, or just to thrive because you like to be recognized, but you don't want to be part of any competition or any lottery. And ultimately, every month, all this really results in is a couple of Amazon vouchers. It's nothing huge, but it really encourages people to thank one another for the little things. Not only just doing a code review for somebody, but also for helping somebody understand a different problem that they never really experienced before, helping someone understand a new security product. All of these little things are really important. And then finally, we also brought in a whole bunch of supporting roles. So earlier I spoke about our teams being Agile software development teams, feature teams, most of them. I've mentioned our core team. We've got this core team plus concept. So this is members of NCS that we bring in into our core team on a 6-monthly basis. And we give them time to be an active member of that team. And their job, just like the rest of the core team, is to unblock problems. Simple as that. We've also got an SRE team to support with encouraging people to care about their non-functional requirements across the piece. And then finally, we have a team that we've called our TAPs, a term that we've stolen. Most of this is stolen, right? We've got it from other people. We borrowed it from other people. Our TAPs, Technical Advisory People. I think we got this term from either Microsoft or Splunk, I can't remember which. And it includes anybody that wants to consult, mentor, coach, train, teach, help other people, and they tend to be specialists. Their job, their primary job, is not to do the work. Their job is to help other people to do their work for them. So ultimately we can scale. At the moment, I said there are roughly 100 people in the area. What I'm going to tell you at the end of this is that actually we need to be around the 400-500 mark this time next year. That's a significant uplift and something that's going to be very difficult to achieve. And in order to do that, I think we can't rely on individuals having that specialist knowledge. It has to be shared across everyone. So the idea here is that these specialists share their knowledge, get other people to do their job for them, whether that be security, whether it be agile, or it could be absolutely anything, software development, testing, design, user experience, anything. So that it leaves these specialists in their remaining time to do the really complex stuff where we need to have that skill. Okay, radical transparency and inclusiveness. We have chosen to use, as an experiment here, to use the Management 3.0 delegation poker concept. So this could be as simple as asking people at the moment in the organization, where do you feel on this scale that you can take your annual leave? Are you told what days you need to take your annual leave? Or is it entirely your decision? You don't have to tell anybody at each end of the spectrum. But we've decided to do this for a number of things. Choose your team. When you join the organization, you as a new person can choose the team that you want to be part of. I don't know any other organization in my life, in my career, that has done this. You're normally recruited for a very specific role. So in this case, I said earlier that when you join, we spend 2 days going through the why of our culture. We also give team briefings. Every team talks about their own little microculture. What's good, what's bad, what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are, where they work, the times they work, what they're missing. And then you, as an individual, a new person to the organization, can choose which team you want to be in. You also get to choose as a team what work you do based on the level of skill, complexity, grade, and experience that you have within your team. Now, obviously, there are some constraints there. We have an amount of work that we need to do, but it's down to the teams to figure out what work is best for them as a team and as for a whole business unit. You also get to choose your line manager, something that is a little bit strange for a lot of people. So we have this thing called pick your own line manager. Your line manager is there to support you and mentor you. Like I said earlier, it's not such a big burden like it used to be because other people are assessing your performance. And then as an example of something that we tried that didn't really work, our training budget. We said, actually, at the start of every year, we know how much training budget we have. So rather than asking people to put together business cases and whoever wordsmiths them the best gets to go on the training and the conferences that they want to go on, we said, nonsense, we're not doing any of that. We know our budget, let's figure out how we can split it up. And let's, instead of splitting up and dividing it to each individual, let's give it to a team, because it's the team's job to invest in themselves as a team. If they've got a new person in that team and that team is now working on, I don't know, a project with JavaScript and they don't understand JavaScript, then maybe it's their decision to send a couple of people on that JavaScript training course. So we decided to give it to the team. It turns out that money is a blocker, especially for a government organization where individuals have rarely been given the opportunity to handle money themselves. It tends to be very hierarchical, it tends to be individuals that can make money decisions. So what we found out in this case is that actually allowing people to spend that money themselves means that nobody spends any of the money and nobody goes on any training. So we've had to make some changes, and we're about to try something new there, where we're going to split that budget into multiple pots. Some of it will be team budgets, some of it will be individual budgets, because you as an individual may want to progress your career in a different way to your team. So you may want to do some soft skills training. And also there's some training that we as an organization, and some conferences as well, that we as an organization know that we need to invest in based on what we're predicting that's going to happen in the future. So we'll mandate some of them courses, but the majority of the budget is still managed by the team. And as I say, we use data to drive everything. A lot of teams that I've worked in the past, both in this organization and elsewhere, have really focused on building the right MI, right? So you have delivery managers and project managers that are all in place to generate the right reporting so we can hand it up to the people that we don't really know who it goes to. We decided that we're going to try and avoid this as much as possible. But we knew that we're spending a lot of money, and it's public money, so we're accountable for that. We're also building teams, and as I said earlier, the team culture is really important. The team health is really important to us. So what we decided to do is say, actually, teams, how do you want to do this? These are the constraints. We need to provide this information. How do we best do this? And now, once a sprint, every one of our teams puts together a newsletter. It's their doing. We didn't tell them to do this. And I don't think, even to this day, we have mentioned it. We've told any team to do this. And every team is different. Every team has named themselves after a fictional creature. There's a team called Werewolf, for example, that puts together a new part of a new page of a comic strip every single sprint. And it's a little story about how the team's progressing and what they're working on. It's also got a little bit of information in there as well about how they're spending money and about how the deliveries are going against the things that we are mandated to track, all of that stuff. But it's more fun, and the team actively do it. We don't have delivery managers or project managers then to do that for them. Okay, so what has this done for us then? So COVID, this happened, I don't know how many weeks ago now. It all feels like it's just one big blur, isn't it? We were already giving people the choice of where they worked. Although we had 3 hubs around the UK and 9 locations, people could travel between them and work in the best place for them on any given day. But because of the technology that we had moved to, which will sound strange to a lot of people that haven't worked in a government setting before, but we were used to isolated networks, devices that we couldn't remove from a building. It's given us a real opportunity. By moving to that, we were able to move everybody to home working within 24 hours, which I think for any organization is pretty good, let alone a government organization that cares about sensitivities. And we did this because we knew that we wanted to focus on being adaptable. So we brought in all the people that would make that happen from day one, way before COVID. We brought in what we would call our accreditors, our security people, our policy people, our legal people. They were all part of the setup of this group to make sure that we could adapt really, really quickly. So we already had these processes in place so we could move to what we would, to home working. Our core team continues to do what they were doing all the time. They are servant leaders. They are there to unblock. They continue to have sessions all over video, and their job is to unblock any problem. We have weekly calls or twice weekly calls. We call them our COVID calls. And when I started doing this, I consider myself, it looked like I was standing in front of a podium, a little bit like Boris Johnson every week. Hopefully, it was a strange experience. And we provided a brief on what was going on in the real world, a brief on what was going on within the organization, and what we were doing to enable people to work effectively and remain safe with their families. And that became a real personal touch that made a real difference. We also gave people using Lean Coffee the opportunity to ask questions and vote on questions. So the things that were really important to the individuals were the things we talked about. We did a survey. So this shows a survey on the screen here, an effectiveness survey just a few weeks ago, where we asked people, you were used to working together in our buildings. You now don't have to do that. You now have to work at home. You don't really get to see your team very much. How are you working? And it turns out that 66% of our people think they're at least as effective, if not more effective than they were before, which is a bit surprising. And we've taken that and we've been able to look at the bits, the 33%, and try and figure out what we can do to improve that. Turns out that the 2 main things are childcare, and we're quite lucky in this sense that we can use our key worker status for some specific tasks that we're doing to remedy that for some of our clients. And home setup. So people at home weren't used to working at home. They didn't have the desk set up. I mean, we work for a government organisation for a reason. I can come home from work a lot of the time, normally in the olden days at least, and I didn't have to think about work because I couldn't do work at home. That had changed. So we needed to make sure we provided the right kit for people to do that. So rather than telling people what they needed to do, we gave everybody a budget and said, spend it on whatever makes your life easier. Again, it's about encouraging people to do the right thing for them and trusting them. And ultimately, that meant that we didn't have to furlough anybody. And actually, we continued recruiting throughout this process, not only doing some interviews and some of our skills assessments that we do internally, but also onboarding people that we had recruited a while ago, but they started from home and we're able to ship them the right kit so they could start working, give them access to the budget, and they were able to start working within a few days of joining us, even throughout COVID. And for an organization that, as I said, is typically working in an isolated environment, that was a real changer for us, game changer for us. And ultimately, earlier I said, we had people joined us 18 months ago, a year ago now, that hadn't written a line of code in their life before. And some of these people are now the people, this is going to scare you maybe, that we've trained, and they are now supporting the NHS digital service and people like the National Cybersecurity Centre in some of their endeavours throughout this process. So we are now putting them forward as cybersecurity engineering experts to help these departments, which, I don't know, 18 months ago I couldn't have imagined doing. And it's enabled us to pivot entire teams and entire parts of our whole business unit at sprint boundaries onto different problems that we didn't even know existed just 12 weeks ago. A few more slides, not too long. So earlier I said civil service survey, we put this together. Once a year it goes out across the whole of the civil service. The first bar in each of these is the minimum, next one's the average, next one's the maximum. The final bar shows NCS, the area that we've built over the last 18 months. So in almost all cases, we are exceeding what the highest other government department has met, whether that be for engagement, whether it be for everybody's work, for their purpose, for how they perceive their line manager and how they're managed through their career, for how they find their team, the learning and development, inclusion within the organization, their workload, the benefits that they get, that's an interesting one, and how we manage change. So in every case, we're above average for an organization that's 18 months old. I think that's quite astonishing. But in almost all cases, we are at, or if not higher, than the highest performing government organization. And I think that speaks volumes, because it's about the culture. We're not doing anything different than any other organization or any other part of the same organization that I work for. We're just doing it in a slightly different way. We're focusing on different things rather than delivery, rather than predictability. We're focusing on the 3 values. Well-being, this is important to us. I've mentioned it a few times in this call. This is the opposite number, so you want the lowest number possible. Again, 18%. So it still shows that 18% of our workforce at some point over the last year have considered themselves in a stressful situation that they wouldn't want to be in. So it's still a number that we need to improve, but it's still at the lowest that any other government department is at. So we've got somewhere to go, but we've got a good benchmark, I think. Okay, never-ending improvement. There are a few things we know we need to do. For example, we need to scale to 5 times our current size over the next year, and we need to make use of industry. We've got to do better agile governance and technical coherence, and we need to improve our diversity, even though we're relatively good at some of them at the moment. There are other aspects of diversity that we need to get better at. So everything so far has been about building trust with our customers, and that's gone a long way. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip over this one here. What I was going to ask you here is to reflect on what you've heard, what you think's good, what you think's not so good, and then I was going to ask you for a little bit of help. I'm going to keep this up at the end, and if you're willing to give me a little bit of help, a little bit of advice, I would very much appreciate that. The question at the end of this is going to be, how do you scale this? What we've built so far has worked for 100 people. We've got there slowly over 18 months, but we now need to rapidly expand that to 400 to 450 people over the next 12 months. What would you do to make that work? What would you focus on next? Okay, so key takeaways. I won't go through them all, but these are the things, if you're going to remember anything in this talk today, these are the 6 things that I think are important. And I really mean each of these. Culture is important. Live by your values. Plan for the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen, so don't plan for anything specific. Don't underestimate social capital. Well-being, mental health is key. If you've got a healthy workforce, you'll have a productive workforce. And then try things and listen to your people. Okay, final point from me is, look, I work for a government organisation. I work for a government organisation that has inherently been quite adaptable, but we're still a big, large government organisation. And if I can do this in a government organisation, then why can't you? There must be opportunities in your organisation to improve your culture. What can you do to improve your culture to make your organisation and your performance better? Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Shaun. Still got a few minutes for some Q&A. So I'll pull up the first question here. It is from Benny. So Benny says, Have team members called out poor performance from colleagues? This seems inherently against British culture. Does the culture you've aimed for work when things don't go well?
Yeah, so you'll probably know, Benny. Thanks for the question. Great question. A lot of the books are written by American authors for the American culture. We needed to try and we have a different culture. Not only are we British, but we also work for a government organisation where the culture is again quite different. I think by encouraging this from day one and recruiting the right type of people that are adaptable and flexible and making it part of their probation from day one and not passing people if they don't do that, being quite brutally honest about it, encouraged our existing staff that we moved across to follow that same culture. And this change only can come from leadership. So whilst we don't have hierarchies and grades and stuff, we still have people that perform leadership functions at all locations of the organization. And if you can get these people to show vulnerability and call each other out in front of everybody, then it becomes normal. So it is hard, don't get me wrong, and it's taken us 18 months, and it's still hard even to this day, and it's going to be harder when we go to 450 people. But I think it's key to making this culture work.
Brilliant, awesome. I've got one more question here, it's possibly a big one. Andy asks, what would you do differently with hindsight?
Great question. Thanks, Andy. I think getting in my case, the wider organisation on board with what we're doing, because we have gone so far. We come up against so many blockers with the rest of the organisation. It becomes really quite difficult, even just butting in with our HR policies as an organisation has become so difficult because we've moved so quickly. But I think if anything, actually the one good thing to take away from the COVID crisis at the moment is actually we've proved that we can do this, and other parts of the organisation and other departments for that matter are now following what we're doing. And it's taken a long time to get there, but I guess it's proved that you can do it if you're willing to. I don't know if anyone's seen the meme, what's caused your digital transformation. I think you could probably say the same thing with what's caused your cultural shifts in your organization. And I think COVID-19, more than any COO or CTO or CEO, COVID-19 has done it right.
And then I guess we've got one more time for one final question here from Benny again. How do you manage licenses and tech choices when teams really do have complete control?
Great question again, Benny. So because we encourage our teams to be transparent, every decision that they make has to be, at least technology decision in this sense, has to be recorded. And we do that in a way that other people subscribe to them types of feeds, so they understand the technology choices that they're making. We also have a team, I called them TAPs earlier, but some of them are coaches, some of them are technology coaches and agile coaches. That team is responsible for going around all the other teams and helping them to make the decisions that they need to make. And that their job really is to understand the different technologies being used across the areas that we have and helping them to align wherever possible. And because we're trying to build this helpfulness culture where people really are helping one another for a significant portion of their time, maybe more than a day a week, they're spending not doing their job but helping other people. People are really willing to adapt and change their technology choices. I hope that answers the question, Benny.
Awesome. Should we leave the questions there now, Shaun, if you want to wrap up with your call to action slide?
Well, thank you very much, everyone. If you do have any points to add, I'd love to hear from you on this page. I don't have the answers here. And thanks to some people on this call who have been brilliant coaches for me and my team. I'd love to get more advice from other people on what you would do next. Thank you.
Brilliant. We'll keep that up there for a few minutes, guys. Thanks again, Shaun. Loads of valuable takeaways and practical insights there.
Thank you.
Really useful.
It's now 29.6 degrees in here.
Yeah, hopefully you can have a nice break after this. I would say step outside, but I'm not sure if it's much cooler outside yet. Awesome, thank you. So as I said, guys, this event's been recorded. You can catch it again online. I'll email you all the link when that's available. We do have another meetup running next month, end of next month, Tuesday the 23rd of June. We've got Sorab Salimi, Vice Chair of the Board of Directors for the Scrum Alliance. So that should be a cool one. And you can find all the details on our Meetup group page there. But yes, thanks again, everybody. Cheers, Shaun, for an awesome session. Hopefully see you guys soon. As I said, we'll leave this up here for you guys if you want to complete the poll. But hopefully see you all very soon.